Hello and welcome back to the lecture on applied econometrics. So in today's lecture we are going to talk about dummy variable. Now in the previous lecture where we spoke about the functional specification, we have seen the different variables and like how these different variables are included in a regression equation. And the kind of data we collect in economics, in the domain of economics or public policy, we will see at the end of the day most of the variables are basically qualitative variable, okay, or they're categorical variable. And what do we mean by qualitative variable? So qualitative variable means the variables which really do not have any specific number assigned, or you cannot really express them quantitatively. For example, if you see male and female, now how exactly you will value male and female, right? So there are two categories, that's it. Or if you think about other variables, for example, political preferences. So if I'm a left or I'm a rightist or I'm a centrist, so how do you really assign values to them? Like how do you really order them? You cannot really order them. So they're just different categories, that's it. Or if it is social group, like social group in India could be like general or scheduled caste, scheduled tribe or OBC. So you cannot really, sort of assign a specific value to each of these different, categories. Or if you think about religion, Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist, Jains, Christians, right, Parsis, and so many different religions you have. Now, how do you really assign a value to them? You cannot really assign a value to them. And interestingly, we'll just see in a while that most of the variables, in that we sort of collect data on from the field are actually categorical variable, okay. And all these different types of examples that I have given of the qualitative variable, these are called dummy variable when you include them in a regression equation, okay. So in this lecture, we are going to see how to really include these variables in a regression equation, and what are the different types of dummy variable we may find, and what are the different tests we might have to do to sort of understand which dummy variables to include in our regression equation. Now, as I said, it's a qualitative variable. And also it is called a nominal scale variable because there is no ordering done, there is no direction. And it is also called indicator variable, and because it represents different categories, it is called categorical variable, okay. And we'll see that because of this categorical nature, because of this qualitative nature of this variable, always how we enumerate the impact of one dummy variable is with respect to one reference dummy variable. So there is a fixed category, and you always try to measure the impact of other categories vis-a-vis the fixed category. For example, if I include a dummy variable called gender, and if I have like my fixed category is male, then I try to see the impact of being female on the outcome variable. So we'll just see all these different this concepts in all these different categories of dummy variable that we're going to see. Now, how I will divide the lecture into different small parts. So, for example, first we will talk about most basic simple dummy variable, that is a binary dummy variable. Say, let's say it is only of two categories. So it could be male, female, it could be rural, urban, it could be white, non-white. So these are the categories where we have this is a binary categories, okay. So you have one category, and you can basically measure the impact of the other category vis-a-vis the first category. So you can define how you actually want to choose the first category. So we'll talk about that in detail. Then we can have more than two categories, right? The examples that I've given, if it is a social group, so you have SC, ST, OBC, general, at least these four social categories we have in India. Now, then you don't have a binary category, so you have like four categories, and four categories essentially talking about the same population, as in like the overall same population. These are different subpopulations within the overall population. And how do you really show the subpopulation vis-a-vis same population when I have more than two subpopulation, all right? You can also think of like people living in different region, right? Some people can live in the western part of India, some people can stay in the southern part of India, some people can stay in the middle of the India, some people can stay in the eastern part of India, some people can stay in the northern part of India. Now, all these regional aspects can actually influence your outcome, right? So whatever outcome variable you have, so these regions can influence your outcome variable. Now, how do you really represent these different regions, right? So then again, it comes in the category where we have more than two categories for the dummy variable, for the specific variable, where you are actually trying to capture the impact of different regions, uh, in India, let's say. Now, I may want to include all the category 1 and category 2 in one regression equation. So, when I do that, how do I really interpret the regression equation? That also we are going to talk about. Then we will talk about slightly different type of dummy variable where we actually take into account the interaction of different dummy variables. For example, if I want to see the impact of being female and being in the city. So, a female who lives in the city. So, that is an interaction dummy variable. I want to see the joint effect of females in rural India, females in urban India vis-a-vis, let's say, females in rural India. Okay. Then I will talk about another type where the dummy variable may interact with a non-dummy variable. So, let's say female, someone is a female, but I want to understand the impact of the female when they actually take into account the education part. So, let's say I want to understand the education of female and how that is impacting the wage. Okay. So, female education and wage. So, I'm trying to understand the joint effect of someone being female and their education and how that is influencing the wage. Okay. So, we will see this category when we talk further on the dummy variable part, different types of dummy variable. Now, let me actually show you the data, okay, or data sets, so that we can actually understand how dummy variable looks like. So, this is I already have imported this data set. So, this is from National Sample Survey data, NSS, and this is for West Bengal. So, we got all the values of all the different fields from National Sample Survey data for the state West Bengal, and this is a 68th round National Sample Survey data. And let me first show you the data set and how it looks like. This is just to give you an idea how important dummy variable is when you actually collect data from the field. So, let's say I have, these are the different fields I have, okay, and I'll explain these fields to give you an idea about the importance of dummy variable. So, these are all these different fields, maybe there are 70, 80 fields that you have when you actually collect data from the field. Let's say, so this FSU sample, these are all some numbers that we get to identify an individual, so we don't need to bother about that. Sector, let's say sector. Sector is basically representing rural and urban, and it has a value, as NSS will show you, 2 and 1. So, it is showing rural and urban. So, either it is 2 or it is 1. See, here it is all 1, it was 2 previously. State is 19. So, for all the different states, we have like all these qualitative numbers. So, 19 means West Bengal. So, the states will vary from 1 to 34, 35. And then you have, this is again a qualitative variable. Then you have region. So, region is again, this is regions are basically bigger unit than a district and a smaller unit than a state. And you have within a state there are several regions. So, these again are categorical variables, 2, 3, you will see the values of region would be 2, 3, 5 and so forth. District, definitely it's a categorical variable because I have say 18 districts, 18 or 19 districts in West Bengal. So, you have all the numbers assigned to the district, 16, 17, 19, right, 18, 7, 4, 1, 2. Then you have some identification number, you don't really have to bother about that. Household number, it is again just a number, so it's a only category. Person serial number, this is again a category. We don't really need to bother about that because we essentially are trying to get an aggregate effect, so not really at household level or something. Consumption for 30 days and consumption for 365 days, these are numerical variables, these are quantitative variables. Okay. So, for the first time we are seeing something which is a quantitative variable. So, it represents some in monetary term. So, how much consumption was done for 30 days or how much consumption was done for 365 days. All right. Household size, that is a quantitative variable, number of people living in a household. Then we have this industry code and then occupation code. These are only just code. So, these are all categorical variables. Then household types, what type of household, based depending on the major occupation of the household owner. We created different categories for household types. So, this again is a categorical variable. Then we have religion. So religion, we have like values 1, 2, 3, so forth. So this is basically Hindu, Muslim, and other religions. Then you have social group. Social group, as we said, this is a categorical variable. So it could be 1, 2, 3, like 9. So there are 4 categories in a national sample survey. So it's basically general, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and OBC. Then land ownership is a quantitative variable. So how many hectares or acres of land you have. MNREGA card, if someone is having MNREGA card, so it will either be 0 or 1, or basically it has 2 values, 1 or 2 here. So this again is a dummy variable. Then we have gender or sex, that is again a dummy variable. So 1 and 2, so it represents male and female. Age is a quantitative variable. You have age, marital status, married, unmarried, widowed, divorced. So these are all categorical variable. General education, you have number of years of education, so that's a quantitative variable. And here you have technical education. Technical education, one can have polytechnic degree, one can have engineering degree, one can have medical degree. So these are all again categorical variable. Okay. So these are current, attendance status. So that is basically if someone is actually attending school or not attending school. These are again a categorical variable. So actually, even these variables, I am not explaining all these different variables, but most of the variables you will see, these are all categorical variable. Okay, so for example, mode of payment. If someone is working in a factory, how the payment is made? Is it made weekly basis? Is it daily basis? Is it monthly basis? So these are all again categorical variables. So all these variables that we see, they are actually categorical variables. So essentially, we'll see most of the variables that we use in the regression equation are categorical variables. So they are all will come under the dummy variable category, and that is why it is so important when you want to use all these different variables in our regression. It is really very important that we understand the concept of dummy variable and how to use the dummy variable. So let's say we want to run a regression on wage, okay, and how we really do that. But before that, let me actually show you how we actually represent the dummy variables. So here I have, you see the data set. In data set, we have the values, because values like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and so forth, right? But you actually want to, so they have not really considered how you are going to use the variables. They simply have assigned some numerical value to represent different categories, but you have to use it. So let's talk about the first category and how to use it. So let's talk about the male-female category. Okay, so the dummy variable with binary categories. Let's say we will deal with the gender, and let's say rural-urban, which is in our data set is sector. So let's see how we are going to use these 2 dummy variables in our regression equation. So let me go back. Let me actually run a regression. Let's see what are the different variables we have. We can see the pane on the right side that actually talks about all these different columns. And let's say I want to run a regression. Let's say I want to run a regression on, let's say, wage total. So that is the wage we have, total wage. So that's my dependent variable. And I'll include some of the independent variables. I have variables like, I will include gender, sex, and age. I will include age or experience. And let's say I will include the levels of education. The levels of education, that is here, general education. And let's say I will include sector, right? Say rural urban. Okay, so let's first run a very simple equation. I can use a do file to run the code, or I can type simply there, regress, let's say wage total, then we general education, then let's say I put age. So age, so for example, like I could have used experience, but I'm not, I have to create experience using other variables like age and years of education. We can do it later on. This is just for the illustration of, let's say, the dummy variable. Now we have sector, and we have, let's say, 6, okay. Or let's first take only one variable, 6, okay, male and female, and if I run it, I will get the regression here, and my regression shows that so you get some value for 6, okay. So it is minus 385.93, and it is significant. P value is 0, so it has important contribution to the regression equation. R square value is not very high, and other variables you included all comes out to be significant. So essentially, how do we explain this regression equation is that you explain it. So you have taken the values of the dummy variable as 1 and 2. So here Stata will choose one reference category, okay. You haven't defined it that way. So let's say the Stata has chosen, in this case Stata has chosen 1 as a reference category, and 1 is male and 2 is female. So the moment you move from 1 to 2, the moment you increase the value, it actually shows that your income is declining, and it is declining 385 rupees, 385.9 rupees, and let's say this income data is per week. So it is per week. A female, if you are a female, then your income is going to be less than male by rupees 385. Okay, so that's basically what it is saying. So with this we will end the lecture here. In the next lecture I am going to detail, basically I am going to explain the regression equation and sort of like how to incorporate the dummy variable in the regression equation in detail. Thank you.